the hand over.
Back inside the forbidden black castle, Jessica returned to evil wizard Peter. The air trembled as she handed him the magical golden coach's whistle. The wizard lifted it with satisfaction, but he did not thank her. Instead, he rose above the floor, floating in the purple glow of his own power. Then he pointed his staff at Princess Jessica. A storm of purple lightning burst from it. The magic wrapped around her body, twisting through her hair, her gown, her hands, and her heart. She gasped as the force surrounded her, but she did not run. This was what she had asked for. This was what revenge demanded. Evil wizard Peter watched as the last pieces of the old Jessica began to disappear. The red dress, the wounded heart, the desperate girl begging for strength. All of it was being burned away by dark magic. And from that storm, something new was about to be born. The transformation. The dark magic did not merely touch Princess Jessica. It remade her. Inside evil wizard Peter's castle, purple lightning coiled around her body like living serpents, wrapping around her arms, her waist, and her heart. As the power surged through her, her red gown vanished into darkness and became a new royal armor of evil, a black and purple dress shimmering with cursed energy. Then came the wings, great bladed wings of shadow and violet flame spread out behind her, larger than any mortal creature should possess. Her eyes opened, glowing with bright purple fire. Evil wizard Peter smiled. The frightened girl, who had once pleaded for power, was gone. In her place stood evil Jessica, reborn. Fierce, beautiful, and terrifying. And in that moment, even the castle itself seemed to bow before her. The battle starts. With her powers restored and her rage burning brighter than ever, Jessica flew to the kingdom. She descended upon the great bridge leading to the royal castle, and there the first battle began. From high above, she stretched out her hands and unleashed streams of crackling purple lightning. The magic shot through the royal guards, tore through shields, and struck the magical defenders gathered at the gate. Knights stumbled. Sorcerers raised glowing staffs. Winged creatures and mystical beasts tried to hold the line. But Jessica's power was overwhelming. The sky darkened above the bridge as the battlefield lit up with flashes of violet destruction. The kingdom had prepared for war, but no one was prepared for what Jessica had become. This was no longer a wounded princess seeking justice. This was vengeance in its full form. And the battle for the kingdom had begun. Taking the fight home. The war did not stay at the bridge. Jessica brought it straight into the heart of the kingdom. Inside the castle grounds, amid broken shields and fallen guards, she stood like a storm given human form. Purple lightning leapt from both her hands, striking enemies on every side. Around her, skeleton warriors rose and fought beneath her command, forming an army born from dark power and death itself. The castle banners still hung proudly above the battle, but the pride of the kingdom was collapsing beneath fear. Jessica screamed as she attacked, not from pain, but from fury long held inside her. Every blast of magic carried betrayal, heartbreak, revenge. The home that had once promised safety had become her battlefield. And now she was taking back every step of it with fire and lightning. The princess was gone. The Queen of Revenge had come home. Commander Nicholas. At last, a true warrior stepped forward. Commander Nicholas, the kingdom's fiercest protector, met Jessica inside the grand hall. His armor gleamed beneath the firelight. His sword was ready, and his heavy shield bore the royal crest. He did not run. He did not kneel. He stood between Jessica and the kingdom. Jessica hurled her purple lightning at him with all her strength. The magic slammed into his shield with a violent burst of sparks. The hall shook with the force of their clash. Nicholas pushed forward, gritting his teeth against the storm. For the first time since her transformation, Jessica faced someone who could resist her. This was not just another frightened guard. This was the commander of the king's forces, and he meant to stop her, no matter the cost. About to lose. The battle turned. Commander Nicholas drove forward with relentless strength, forcing Jessica backward across the shattered floor of the hall. Her lightning flickered wildly as she lost her footing, and then she fell. She hit the ground hard. Her great bladed wings spread across the floor behind her. Purple energy still crackled around her, but it was no longer enough to keep Nicholas back. He raised his sword high above her. For a moment, it seemed the battle was over. For a moment, it seemed Jessica, the dark avenger who had brought terror to the kingdom, was about to be defeated. On the floor, Jessica looked up, one hand raised, her glowing eyes still burning with defiance. Even in defeat, she did not beg. Even in danger, she did not surrender. But for the first time since embracing the darkness, victory slipped from her grasp, and death stood above her. What's happening? Just when all hope seemed lost, the impossible happened. Commander Nicholas stood above evil Princess Jessica, sword raised high, ready to strike the final blow. She lay on the cold floor, wounded and weakened, her great purple wings spread around her like broken shadows. Then, in a flash, a spear tore through the moment. A young knight, Ryan, lunged forward and struck Commander Nicholas straight through the chest. Purple power exploded through the commander's armor, exposing his shock, his pain, and his disbelief. Even Jessica, lying on the ground below, stared upward in stunned confusion. This was no ordinary interruption. This was betrayal. No one expected the kingdom's own warrior to turn against one of its greatest defenders. The hall froze in disbelief, as if time itself had gasped. And in that wild, impossible instant, the battle changed. Unexpected help. The young knight Ryan did not turn his weapon toward Jessica. Instead, he knelt beside her. With steady hands, he helped Jessica rise from the floor, supporting her, as though she were not his enemy, but someone he had come to save. Her glowing purple eyes met his, filled with confusion, suspicion, and a flicker of hope. Behind them, a portal of swirling purple magic opened. Out stepped evil wizard Peter, calm and powerful, his staff glowing with dark authority. He watched the scene unfold with the quiet satisfaction of a man whose plans were moving exactly as intended. Jessica had expected hatred, fear, and resistance. She had not expected rescue, and certainly not from a knight wearing the colors of the kingdom. For the first time in a long while, Jessica understood that even in war, help can come from the least expected hand. Under cover. Then, the truth was revealed. The young knight Ryan, who had saved Jessica, was no loyal servant of the kingdom at all. He had been hidden in plain sight, an ally buried deep within the enemy ranks. As purple lightning rose behind him, dark magic wrapped around his armor and transformed him. His noble green steel became blackened and sharpened with violet power. Dark wings unfolded from his back, and he stood reborn as a warrior of shadow. Jessica looked on in astonishment. What she had taken for a last-minute miracle was in truth part of a far deeper design. Evil wizard Peter had not come to the kingdom unprepared. He had planted help where it could do the most damage, at the very heart of the royal defense. The kingdom had believed this knight belonged to them, but he had never truly been theirs. He had been undercover all along, and now he stood beside darkness openly. Explanation of justice. Jessica needed answers. Why had the wizard arranged all of this? Why had the knight turned? Why was this war growing bigger and her own pain? So evil wizard Peter showed her. With a wave of his hand, circles of purple magic opened in the air like windows into the past. Inside them appeared scenes long buried in silence. The king and his men standing in judgment over the helpless. Innocent lives torn apart by royal cruelty. Families broken by secret decisions. And truths hidden to preserve the kingdom's shining image. Jessica watched in silence as the pieces fell into place. This was not only about her betrayal by the prince. This was about a kingdom that called itself good while burying its sins beneath gold, titles, and ceremony. The wizard spoke not of revenge, but of justice. Harsh, merciless, dark, but justice all the same in his eyes. The young knight Ryan's loyalty, the kingdom's hidden rot, and Jessica's own suffering were all part of the same chain. What had seemed like personal heartbreak was now something larger. A reckoning had begun. Caught the king. At last, the crown itself fell into their hands. The king was captured alive. Suspended in the air by spirals of crackling purple power, he floated helplessly between evil wizard Peter and Ryan, the Dark Knight. His royal robes hung heavy around him, but his authority meant nothing now. His eyes were covered, his movement stripped away, and even his crown seemed powerless against the magic that bound him. Around them, the broken kingdom trembled. The castle behind them stood dark beneath a storm-lit sky, and the age of royal certainty was coming undone. The king, who had once ruled above all others, now hung like a prisoner before the very forces he had failed to stop. Jessica's war had passed beyond heartbreak. Now, it had reached the throne. And with the king captured, the villains no longer stood outside the kingdom. They stood over it. Justice is served. Outside the ruined castle grounds, beneath the twisted branches of an ancient tree, evil wizard Peter and evil Ryan knelt in silence. Behind them, King Rion hung helplessly against the tree, bound by rope and dark magic. The proud ruler, who once commanded armies, castles, and kingdoms, could no longer give orders. His crown remained on his head, but it no longer meant power. In front of Peter and Ryan stood a gravestone. The words upon it were simple, but heavy with years of pain. For your mother, for you, my wife. At last, the truth behind their rage became clear. This was not only conquest. This was not only revenge for Princess Jessica. For evil wizard Peter and evil Ryan, this was payment for an old wound that had never healed. They believed justice had finally arrived, but it was not gentle justice. It was dark, cruel, and unforgiving. And in that moment, the kingdom's past sins returned to claim their price. The chase. With the king defeated, Jessica returned to the royal palace corridors. Her power was fully restored. Purple lightning exploded from her fingertips as she marched through the grand hallway. Her black wings spread wide behind her. Guards tried to stop her, but they could barely stand against the storm she had become. Far ahead, Prince AI and Princess Amber ran toward the main hall. They no longer looked like lovers hiding in secret. They looked like prey. Princess Amber's blue gown shimmered as she fled, and Prince AI's white royal suit flashed beneath the chandeliers. They did not look back for long. Behind them came the fury of the princess they had betrayed. Jessica screamed as she attacked, and her voice echoed through the palace like thunder. This was no longer a chase through corridors. It was judgment closing in. Trapped. At last, there was nowhere left to run. Inside the main ballroom, Princess Amber and Prince AI fell to their knees before evil Princess Jessica. The same ballroom that once held music, dancing, laughter, and secret glances now stood dark and silent. Purple mist curled across the floor. Lightning flickered around Jessica's hands. Her wings filled the room like the shadow of a nightmare. Amber and Prince AI looked up at her, helpless. They had once hidden their betrayal behind smiles and whispers. Now, they faced the one they had broken. Jessica stood before them, calm and terrible. She did not need to shout. She did not need to chase anymore. They were trapped, and the power now belonged to her. Be the slime that you are. Jessica raised both hands. Purple lightning shot from her fingertips, wrapping around Princess Amber and Prince AI like glowing chains. The magic twisted, cracked, and burned through the air as the ballroom filled with screams and violet light. Then, suddenly, the two figures were gone. Where Princess Amber had knelt, only her blue gown, jewels, and crown remained on the floor. Where Prince AI had knelt, only his white royal suit and decorations lay in a ruined heap. Beside the fallen clothing were two tiny snails, small, powerless, slow. Jessica looked down at them with cold satisfaction. To her, this was the perfect punishment. They had hidden their betrayal in beauty, charm, and royal elegance. Now, all of that had been stripped away. All that remained was what she believed they truly were. Slime. Revenge. Morning light entered the main hall, but it brought no peace. Jessica stood in the center of the royal palace, her black and purple gown glowing with dark power. Her wings stretched behind her, and her face burned with triumph. Around her, guards, mythical creatures, and Donovan the Jester cowered in fear. The kingdom watched helplessly as Jessica held the remains of her revenge in both hands. Golden slime dripped down toward the polished floor, shining beneath the morning sun. No one dared speak. No one dared move. The princess, who had once played in the garden, who had once loved and trusted, was gone. In her place stood a queen of vengeance. Princess Amber and Prince AI had betrayed her heart. The king had fallen. The guards had failed. The palace itself trembled before her. And Jessica smiled through her fury, because at last, revenge was hers, and they lived happily evil after. High above the ruined kingdom, on the edge of a dark mountain cliff, the new rulers stood together. Below them, the royal palace burned. smoke rose from the towers. Fire spread across the grounds, the forests, the farms, and the once peaceful villages. Dragons circled the skies, while people and magical creatures fled in fear across the valley. The kingdom that had once shone with beauty, music, friendship, and royal pride was now broken beneath the weight of revenge. On the mountain stood evil wizard Peter, holding dark power in his hand. Beside him stood evil Princess Jessica, no longer the innocent girl in the red dress, but a powerful, winged queen of shadow. Next to her stood evil Ryan, loyal, silent, and armed with the same purple magic that had helped bring the kingdom to its knees. And at evil Princess Jessica's feet knelt Donovan the Jester, the fool who had once whispered the truth, now belonged to the darkness he helped awaken. With a collar around his neck and Jessica holding the chain, he looked up at her like a servant before his queen. Together, they watched the old world fall. Princess Amber and Prince AI were gone. King Rion was defeated. Commander Nicholas had fallen. The palace was no longer a place of safety. It had become a warning. Jessica looked across the burning land, and for the first time since her betrayal, she felt no pain, only victory. The fairy tale had not ended with forgiveness. It had not ended with true love. It had not ended with the kingdom restored. This story had a wicked twist. And so, beneath the smoke-filled midday sky, while the world below ran from the fire, the victors stood proudly on the mountain and claimed their ending. And they lived happily evil